guys, welcome back. So today we're going to be doing a little project for an instant hot water heater. So up north in my old house I had an instant hot water heater, loved it, use it every day. I eat oatmeal for breakfast pretty much every day, so it was just a way that I could just quickly get my oatmeal prepared, didn't have to put it in the microwave, boil water, any of that kind of stuff. Great for tea, hot chocolate, anything like that that you need just instant hot boiling water for. So it's a faucet that goes in your countertop, right? And then you just hit the lever, you got instant hot water. So we're gonna put one of those in down here in Florida. And then the other thing is, I always, when I'm going through these types of things, try to research different models that are out there. And I did continue to do that, and I decided that I'm still going to stick with the same brand I had before, which is InSinkErator. It's this model right here, and this brand basically uses the same tank for all their different types of faucets. So they have a couple different styles you can choose from. I picked this moderner style right here. It's sort of matches the rest of the sink here. It's in satin nickel finish. And yeah, this one is a single lever. They also make one with two levers if you want cold and hot, if you're doing like filtered water or something like that. But for me, in my case, I'm just after the instant hot water. So we're going to be showing you exactly how you install that. In my case, it's going to be in a quartz countertop, so we'll show you how you drill your hole and go through all that process. Fairly straightforward. You will have to buy a couple extra pieces that does not come with the actual unit itself, but besides that, should be pretty straightforward. So let's jump into this. So what do you get in the package? Well, you're going to get the tank itself. This is obviously what heats up the water. This goes underneath the sink. It will be mounted underneath there. It does require an electrical outlet, so you need to have one underneath your sink. And it is a hot water tank. It's sort of like a, almost like a little mini heater. So it does use 750 watts of power. So you have to make sure you have enough power underneath there, depending. You don't probably want to put it on the same circuit as something that's constantly also using a lot of power underneath there. So typically underneath the sink you have the garbage disposal operating down there. So if you have that, and then maybe the plug for the dishwasher or something, you probably don't want to put it with the dishwasher, because when the dishwasher is running, when this kicks on to, keep the water heated, it's probably going to trip your breaker, depending if you have a 15 or 20 amp circuit. However, you could probably put it with the garbage disposal, because the garbage disposal you're only using whenever you're, grinding up garbage in your sink and stuff like that. So the odds of you hitting the two at the same time are probably rare, and even that, the garbage disposal doesn't take as much power, so they're probably both fine on even a 15 amp circuit. So, but you are going to need that, so you check that out before you purchase this unit. It's going to come with the actual faucet itself, and like I said, there's different styles that you can choose from, okay? And then it's going to come with there's 4 lines that actually come out of this. We'll talk about what each one of those does. And it's going to come then with some gaskets and washers, right, to mount it to your sink and stuff like that, and an instruction booklet. And that's pretty much all you're going to get with the actual unit itself. Now, you will need to buy some extra pieces also, depending on your situation. So in my case, I've got a quartz countertop. There's no hole, as you can see. So I also have to buy a diamond hole saw, right, to drill a hole in the counter. And then the other thing you are going to need is some kind of connection to the supply line. So if you look at the supply line, which is this one right here, it's made out of a polyethylene tubing, very durable, but it doesn't have any connector on the end. And that is because they are leaving it open because everybody has different types of valve connections underneath their sink. So in that particular case, you may have to buy some extra pieces. In my case, I have this little shark bite connector right here. We'll show you how we're going to connect it to our valves underneath. And depending where your supply valve is, you may need some extra tubing. So I also bought the same diameter 1/4 inch polyethylene tubing so that I can lengthen this if I need to, which I am going to, I already know, underneath the sink to get to my water connection. And this is kind of the same stuff that's used for like refrigerator water lines and things like that. So, And again, these quick connect fittings from SharkBite are what's used to join these together. And then you'll need another fitting to actually join it to the actual supply valve, depending on what your supply valve looks like. So there's different ones. I replaced all mine under the sink with quarter turn compression ones, so we'll show you that when we get underneath there. But that's really all the supplies you're going to need, in addition to obviously a drill, tape measure, and a pencil so you can mark where you're going to put your hole. And that's really all it is. This is going to be mounted anywhere that you have room underneath your sink. It's not that big of a unit, so it should fit no problem under most sinks, even ones that have garbage disposals, etc. And it's just 2 screws that come with the unit that you're just going to hang it basically under the sink somewhere, and that's pretty much it. The lines, as far as hooking it up to the top here, very simple. They're all quick connects. So the main one right here has a O-ring seal, and you can see right here is the connection for that. You just pop it on, it clicks. The other 2 lines right here are just compression fit lines. So you just squeeze them on the 2 different ports right here. So basically they have, I believe it goes, the supply comes into the faucet, comes back down here, and then this goes out to the faucet. This is a return line. So what this does is, instead of you having to cut a hole into a drain, it just returns the water back to the sink. So you've got the 3 connections right here, and that's pretty much it. So our next step is going to be to get our hole made in the sink. All right, so the biggest thing about this project is drilling a hole in your countertop. And a lot of people are very hesitant about trying to drill a hole in their, beautiful stone countertops, whether it's quartz, granite, marble, whatever it happens to be, right? If you have a sort of a wood countertop like butcher block or something, it's a lot easier, obviously. But when you're dealing with stone, people get really nervous. However, you don't have to be, because as long as you have the right tool for the right job, there will be no issues. And so basically what I've done here on mine is, you can see right here I have the faucet right here. By the way, just FYI, this is a Delta Touch faucet here that I had up north. I got it the same one down here. These things are fantastic. They work great, and I just replaced that. So if you want to see the Delta Touch faucet videos, I have those. There's older ones on my page here that you can go and see about those. But Delta, fantastic. These things always work 100%, never any issues with it. So I already did that on my sink here. The other thing I did is I installed a soap dispenser into the countertop. So here I drilled a hole, just like we're going to do in a couple minutes, and this is a matching soap dispenser. But instead of having the little tiny bottle, which is usually underneath these things that you have to constantly refill, what I did is I hooked it up to a gallon container. So if you look under the sink here, you can see I got a gallon of Dial like antibacterial hand soap down here. And all I did is I got a piece of vinyl tubing and ran it all the way up to the bottom and pushed it onto the stem on the soap dispenser up top. So instead of having that little bottle here that you use a pain in the butt to constantly take on and off and fill and everything, this will last a long time because it's a whole gallon. And all you have to do is get this little check valve right here. And what the check valve does is, once the suction has been created and you get it up to the top of the soap dispenser, the soap will never run back down now. And so every time you hit the pump up top, you're always going to have soap instantly. You don't have to, pump it more than once. And so that's all you need. And now you can have a gallon jug here that lasts a long time, depending, how many people are using your soap dispenser. But you don't have to constantly refill it and stuff like that. So just FYI, you can do something like that very easily with some tubing, a check valve. I just drilled a hole in the cap here just to make sure, and I drilled it a little smaller than the tubing so that the tubing squeezes into it and creates an airtight seal around it. And that's all you got to do for that. So on my counter here, the builders put the faucet and the garbage disposal button right next to each other, and they're aligned, they're on a center line right there, okay? When I did the soap dispenser, I actually moved it a little more forward because I want the tip of the soap dispenser over the sink in case it would ever drip, right? You don't want to drip it, I don't want it on the counter. So it's a little more forward, and so we're going to do the exact same thing with the hot water, instant hot water dispenser, and move it a little more forward. So in other words, these two outer items are on the same center line, and these two inner ones are on the same center line. So everything will look symmetrical, basically. Your biggest thing with this is measure, measure, measure to make sure you have it exactly where you want it. All right, so, you know, depending on your sink, this is going to vary, but in my sink right here, this is an under-counter rimless sink. So it's mounted from underneath up to the stone, but what you have to take into account is where the sink bends, the 90-degree angle, right, that's going to have a lip, and that lip is going to be around the entire perimeter of the sink. So you have to account for that lip because you don't want to cut through it. So I went underneath the sink, and the lip is 3/4 of an inch past the bend, right, where it bends. The problem is, if you do a 3/4 from the tip of the from the edge of the stone right here, that is not going to be the right spot, because if you look underneath here, it's indented, and it's actually a 1/4 inch. So really, from the edge of the stone, we need to be at least an inch back before we cut our hole. Otherwise, we're going to be cutting into the metal edge. The other thing you have to keep in mind is underneath the sink, there's usually 6 clamps somewhere around there that go around the sink. And so what happens is, in the bottom of the stone, they cut a slot, and then the little bolt gets slid into the slot, and then there's a clamp and a nut that clamps the sink that holds it up against the stone, in addition to the sealant that they put around it, okay? You want to make sure that wherever you're putting your hole, there's not a clamp right there, because if there is, you'd have to remove the clamp, which makes it a little bit of a weak spot, even though the sealant is really holding it at that point. And you don't want to run into it either, because remember, when you drill your hole, it's just not about the hole. Once the faucet is in there, you have to put the bigger nut on the bottom, and that nut is wider than the hole. So you have to account for the diameter of the nut and make sure that the nut clears everything that's around there. So if you have a clamp right there, and even though your hole might not hit the clamp, your nut might hit the clamp when you're actually putting it together. So you have to make sure that you're accounting for all these clearances so that when you put your faucet in and you put your nut on, there's no issues at all and you're not running into anything. So in my particular case, the clamp is actually, I think, way over here. So I'm in the clear as far as the clamp goes. I've already measured this, so basically if I measure the center line of where I want it to be, it's 2 1/4 back from the front edge. That is exactly the center line from the soap dispenser, 2 1/4. And then if I go from this edge right here over to the center line, it's 2 1/2 exactly to here. And the same thing for the soap dispenser, it's exactly 2 1/2 from this edge over to the center line. So that means that this right here is going to be the exact same position as this, as far as how far it's in from the edges and far out from the back edge right here, and that's all you're after. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect. Nobody's going to notice a little bit off, but I'm a little particular, you know, and I always like to have everything as close to correct as possible, so that's why I did it that way. So what I did is, after I got my cross point here with those 2 center lines on it, I just put a dot on the quartz here with a pencil, and then what I did is I took the little washer that actually goes on the shaft of the faucet, and I centered it on that dot, and then I just made a line around it, and then you take it off, and then you can kind of visually look and see, does that look like it's in the right position, comparing the 2 ends there between the soap dispenser and the actual where the faucet's going to be. Now, you figure, a lot of people are like, why don't you just take the faucet and put it in place? Well, because the faucet has all these lines which are not removable coming out the bottom, so you can't really set it down to see where it's going to be, right? It's just, you can get sort of an idea, but it's just not a good way to do it. So measuring is always your best way, and just measure 2 or 3 times to make sure that when you're reading the tape measure, you're not accidentally looking someplace else on the tape measure, like an inch off. And then as soon as you get your pencil mark on there, you're going to be able to visually tell if you're right in the ballpark of where you should be. that you know where your hole is going to be and you're ready to start drilling, you need an actual bit. This is a hole saw, and this is a diamond bit hole saw. And basically, diamond bit hole saws will cut through stone. This is what all the countertop guys use, etc. Now, if you're only using this for the one time, and you're just drilling it for this one hole, and that's going to be the end of it, then you don't need to necessarily buy this $100 hole saw. Okay, I got these on Amazon. These are made by a company called Deckcraft. I don't know if you can see that, if it focuses, but anyway, Deckcraft. You get the right diameter for what your instructions say. So for this particular unit, it's 1 3/8 minimum hole. And I always go towards the minimum instead of trying to get the maximum, because if you make it too big, you certainly can't put material back, right? So you want to make sure you get the right size for whatever your piece that you're putting in your countertop, okay? And then, like I said, it's diamond, and this one has a center starting bit in the middle of it, which also has a special bit on it to cut through stone, okay? Because that's what centers it before the outside edges start cutting through the stone. Now, a couple of things when you're cutting through stone with one of these bits. When you start it, everybody always wants to just push straight down into stone, which is wrong. That's a mistake. So you don't want to just push straight down once you start drilling into the stone. What you want to do is rock it back and forth, left and right. So it's kind of like you're going around like this when you're going into the stone. It does a couple of things. So when you're doing that, it leaves pressure off of the edge of the actual bit or hole saw itself, so that this gets to cool a little bit as you're going around, right? So as you're going around like this and you're sort of rocking it around, you're still putting pressure on it, you're pushing down on it at the same time, but it's gonna, for just a split second, it relieves pressure on different parts of the ring, so they can cool down for a second, you know, because they heat up very fast. And if you heat it up too much, it's gonna ruin the end of the bit, and then you may not make it through your stone, okay? Now, the ones I bought, these were only $20, and they came in a pack of 2. So I actually got 2 for $20, which is, you know, a really good deal. And I used it on the other one over there, worked perfectly fine. So yeah, so for my particular situation, I didn't have to spend a whole bunch of money on a bit, because you can get bits from 20 bucks all the way up to $150 depending. But I'm not a contractor. I'm probably not going to use this again after this. If I did, it'd be one time or something like that. So there's really nothing for me to spend extra money on. So just keep that in mind. But you want to get a fairly high quality diamond bit though. Don't get a piece of junk, because then it's just going to be a pain if you can't get through the stone. And the other thing that you're going to want to do is when you start drilling through the stone, especially if you're in the house, is you're going to want to make sure you have water here. So you want to make sure it's in water while you're drilling the stone. And that does 2 things. Obviously, it cools it down, so that's going to make your diamond bits last longer on your hole saw. But the main thing it does, the #1 thing, is it prevents a dust cloud from going throughout your house. If you try to drill through this simple, you know, this is probably, I think, 1.5 inch stone here. If you try to drill through this dry, I'm not saying you won't get through it, you will. There will be a dust cloud like you're in the middle of Kansas or something. During a tornado or something, because it will just be a giant dust cloud in your house, and your entire room will be covered with quartz or granite or marble dust or whatever it is, which is really nasty stuff to try to clean up, okay? You do not want that to happen. Now, if you have somebody to help you and they can hold a vacuum here at the same time that you're drilling, that's fine, but you don't even need that. If you make sure that this is encapsulated in water when you're drilling, there will be 0 dust flying in your house, and all it will do is create like almost a little pancake mix right around here that you'll simply wipe up once you finish your drilling. And so what we're going to do is actually we're going to take some tape and we're going to create sort of a barrier like right here, sort of like this. You get the idea. I'll do this quicker later, but we're gonna just put a couple layers of tape to build it up, just a little tiny bit. And then we're gonna just pour water right here, and the water will sort of stay within the tape, right? Because water always goes to the path of least resistance. So it'll stay sort of within this area right here. Just keep a cup of water right next to it, and then start drilling. And then you'll drill, drill, drill. And then when you see it drying out, like there's no more water left, it's pretty much because it evaporates because of the heat that happens. You just take your cup and pour some water into it, and then just keep going. If you keep this wet with water, you will have zero dust in your house. And it's easy to clean up, and it'll keep the bit cool, so it'll go through the stone faster, and you won't have to change bits and ruin your bits, the tip of your bits. So just some tips for drilling through, and this is for any stone, whether it's a countertop, whether you're in your shower drilling through porcelain or ceramic tile, whatever it is, right? If you keep the bit wet, then you're not gonna have a huge mess in your house, and it's gonna make your bit last longer, and you're gonna get through your project, whatever it is, whatever material you're trying to get through faster. So just keep that in mind. All right, so the first thing you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna, where you have your center dot on your circle right here, is you wanna do just a little punch. So this is a punch that has a pointed tip on it right here. And you just wanna make a little punch right on the countertop right here. Now, you're not gonna slam this down. This is just a quick, small little tap. And all that's gonna do is just put a little chip right there where the, your dot is, so that the tip of the bit here, the centered bit, will not walk when you start drilling. So in other words, if you don't do that, there's a possibility when you start drilling, it could walk to the left or right, and then your hole is going to be off center, right? So you want to make sure that on your first couple of, it's just for a couple of seconds, but the first couple of seconds of drilling, you want the tip of this center bit here to go exactly in that position. And then once the outer ring starts grinding into the countertop, then you're good, okay? So all you're gonna do is basically take your punch, put it right on your hole or your mark where you want it right there, and just gonna give it a little tap. And that's all you need. You don't need any more than that. Don't pound on it, because you don't wanna crack your countertop, right? But that just put a little divot right there, and that's where our tip is going to rest right in there when we start doing our drilling. And then you're just going to put your bit in your drill. This is a standard variable speed drill, nothing special. Doesn't have to be a hammer drill or anything. Just make sure your battery, if it's cordless, is fully charged, and you're ready to go. So I just laid down some disposable cloths right here around the hole where we're going to drill. The only reason I'm doing that is because when you have the water and the dust mixing together, it turns to like a pancakey batter type of mixture, and it'll spit from the drill just a little bit out from the area that you're drilling. So if you want to just save yourself a lot of cleanup mess if you throw these down, whatever you do, do not use towels or something that you want to use again, because you cannot throw these in your washer. If you throw these in your washer with that quartz dust or granite or whatever it is, you're gonna wreck your washer. It's gonna get in everywhere, because these are tiny little stone particles basically, right? So you don't want to deal with that. Just use something disposable that you can then throw away after you're finished with it. All right, so what we're gonna do is just get a little water here. It's gonna just sit right in there. It's not much, right? But you can see a little puddle right there on the inside of the thing. And then we're gonna take our drill. Just going to put your tip right where you have your little dot there, and just a couple, just to get it started. Now, you can see right now where it starts to get cakey, right? That means you need more water, right? So all you're gonna do is just pour a little more water in there, and then just continue on, because now you have your center hole. And again, the second you see like cakiness or dryness coming out, you need more water. Just keep pouring it on. We're almost there. We're pretty far. We're pretty deep right now. Back. Sorry about that. I forgot one other thing, which is once you actually break through, right, all this is going to go down into your cabinet. So I put a towel underneath there too, right? We're almost there. And there we go, we're through. So there you go. So now we have our hole in our counter. It's let me get a rag here, but just wipe that up right there. Just be careful when you're putting your finger down here. Like the edges on the bottom can be very sharp from the cut. So, but you can see right there, there's our hole in our counter now. And there's no mess except a little goo around here, but you didn't see any dust flying through the air. If you had done that dry, there would have been a complete dust cloud throughout this entire room. So that's how you put a hole in your stone, quartz, marble, whatever kind of countertop you have. All right guys, so there's our completed hole. I've got the countertop all cleaned off. The hardest part of this whole process is actually getting this plug out of this drill bit. It's a pain in the butt, but you will get it out. But just be careful. Again, it's sharp edges here on the actual stone itself, so just make sure you don't touch this. You know, you sort of have to pry it out. But anyway, that's it. And I cleaned up underneath the cabinets. Another quick tip: do not wash this into your sink and then run it down the drain. Again, you've got stone bits and dust that is going to get into your garbage disposal if you have one, which is not going to be good for it. Especially for the bearing in the motor where the food would normally go, the soft food, but now you have actual stone shavings going in there, so don't do that. And you also don't want to put it down your drain because it's going to settle at the bottom of the trap and probably then in the future cause issues with clogging and stuff. So just stay away from all that. Use disposable. I just use shop rags, clean it all up, and you'll be good to go. I did install the actual faucet itself. So on the faucet, just make sure you have your sealing washer, rubber washer first, right underneath the rim of the main faucet housing here. And then what goes on next is you have your nut, obviously, that's going to go on. The nut has a steel washer that goes on top of that. And then this rubber washer goes between the steel nut and the counter, basically, or your countertop, your stone. And that just does another seal on the bottom. So basically this just seals. The only reason you need this is it just in case there's like any water that, you know, from spilling or whatever drips here, it doesn't go down inside your cabinets, right, and like, you know, cause rot in your cabinets and stuff like that. That's the only thing it's for. It's not used for anything in the use of the actual product itself. So all we gotta do is feed this through the hole here. Pretty simple, right? Just make sure you get all your lines in there. Just feed it down. If your hole was the right size, you shouldn't have a lot of play. It's got a little play here. As you can see, it has an adjustable spout, so I can actually move it. If we zoom in a little bit here. Okay. You can see right now, very little movement left and right, back and forth, because the hole is pretty close to where it needs to be. And you can decide when you mount it down below and you tighten up the nut. Do you want it so that the actual control here is just straight with the sink? Do you want to tilt it in a little bit like that so you're pulling on it in that direction when you have your water? The spout is movable, so that can be any direction, but you're just deciding which way you want your control handle to be when it's actually mounted on the countertop. Some people like the angle look here, where if we bring it around the front here, you can kind of see, right? It's sort of at the angle so that when you're doing your cup here, it's right there. Some people just want it straight to follow the rest of everything on the countertop, right? And then you can always have the spout in a little bit from there. So I think I'm more of a person that likes everything aligned, so I'm gonna go with the having it parallel to the sink side here, and we'll go with that. But you can see it's got plenty of room over here because it overhangs into the sink, so any drips of water will just go right into the sink, and that's pretty much it. So all I gotta do is get my washer and the nut on here, get that tightened up, and then we'll come back and show you the next step. First thing you want to do is just snug up the nut. You can see when I did that, it moved on me, right? This is obviously much easier if you have two people. One person on top here can hold it in position that you want it while the other hand tightens the nut below. You don't have to crank down on the nut underneath, by the way. You just need it tight enough so that when you hit the handle here, it's not gonna move left or right. And you can see even now, and I haven't even tightened it up, it's not moving, right? So now I'm just getting it in the exact position I want it right here. And now I can go underneath and then finish hand tightening it. And you just hand tighten it. You don't need to use any tools, anything like that. That's gonna over tighten it, which does two things. It destroys the seal because you crush the rubber seals. And two, you could actually crack the plastic nut if it's too tight, right? Don't forget, this is a unit right here that is gonna expand and contract from the heat coming off of it because it's, you know, boiling water coming out of it. So don't over tighten it, but you can tighten it nice and snug. And your goal is that this doesn't move around. Because what happens is when you tighten this down, that rubber washer that's right below here creates a heavy friction, so it's not gonna move. But just snug it down nice and tight, and that's all you need. Except now that you have your faucet mounted, you've got your 4 lines right here, and you can see I've already put 2 screws in the cabinet. This is where my unit is going to hang down, and I'm just going to attach my 3 lines to the top of it. The last one that won't be attached will be this one, which is the supply line for the water, and we'll talk about how we're going to attach that. So let's get the unit mounted and the lines attached. When you mount the unit, don't plug it in yet. You don't want to plug it in until it has water in it, but for right now we're just going to attach the lines. We have our tank mounted right here, very simple. We're going to connect 3 lines, so they're all sort of like different diameters, so it should be pretty easy. This one is the quick connect one, which goes in the back here. It's only one that can fit on this port. And then the other 2, these are soft, sort of neoprene lines. The bigger one goes on there. Obviously the smaller one, because they're different diameters, will go on the outer one here. And the only thing you'll have left is this hard plastic one, polyethylene line, and that's the one that's going to be connected to the supply line. So these just slide right on here, so you just sort of put them on those ports right there, and you should be good. There you go. That's what it looks like. This is the line that goes out to the faucet for the hot water once it's heated. There's a return line here, and the one is the feed line coming into the tank from the cold water. So you basically have those 3 lines right there. So the feed line that's not attached yet goes up to the actual fixture and then comes back down, and I think it's the middle one right here that fills the tank. This is the output once it's heated, and this is just an overflow that will come back into the tank. So that's all you're doing right there. So our final step is to get the actual supply line connected to the tank. All right, so our final step is going to be to attach our supply line to our water supply. Now normally, as you can see, the line is pretty long, and you'll probably be able to attach it in a normal installation. However, unfortunately, in my sink right here, when they built the house, they actually plumbed the pipes backwards. This side over here is actually hot, which would normally be the cold side, and over here the pipes coming out are actually the cold pipes. So they have them backwards, and so because of that, the pipe or the valve, right, that I'm going to attach this to is actually on the opposite side over here, and that won't reach over here, which is why I bought the extra tubing and the connector so I could connect them together. But as you can see on mine, I'm just using a standard quarter turn valve right here that has a compression fitting on the end. So all I did is I got a brass adapter that goes from the 3/8 to the quarter, and then this is the 1/4" push fitting that normally you would just push the line into and that would be it. But because it's too short, I have to take a piece of line off of here, go over, and then that's the coupling fitting that I bought that's going to join those two together to make my connection. So in my particular case, I just have a weird situation where the builder plumbed the lines backwards coming out of the wall. But in normal situations, you probably have enough tubing that by the default to just get it to your valve. Now, if you don't have a separate outlet coming out of your wall like I do on that side, you can also get one of these that you can see here. This is a double valve, so this is handling 2 feeds off 1 pipe. So the one here goes to the hot on the faucet, the other one goes to the dishwasher hot over here. Has 2 separate shutoffs, right? So you can get one of these double valves. So if you have one right now that just has a single valve on it, you don't have to cut into it. Don't use those saddle valves and everything that puncture lines. They're terrible, and eventually a lot of times they leak. Just do it the right way and replace your current single valve with a double valve like this one, and you'll be all set. Then you can write on the 3/8 connector, just put the little brass adapter from 3/8 to 1/4, and then you'll use your 1/4 push adapter, and that's what'll connect it in there. So let me go grab the tubing and we'll get this all set up. What we're going to use is this 1/4" polyethylene tubing. That's what you want. Don't get any, the tubing should be this hard polyethylene. Do not get any kind of vinyl tubing, anything like that. That's just going to be an explosion of water all over the place. And then you're going to get the 1/4" right here. Now, unfortunately, it came in 25 feet, which I don't need, but that's just the way it goes sometimes. And then I have this shark bite, which is going to be a coupling. It's just a straight coupling, so I'm going to push the tube that comes out of the InSinkErator unit into the one end. I'll push the tube on one here at this end, and then cut the length, and then the other one goes at the valve itself. So let me get that going. So pretty much the way it works is you take your tubing, you want to make sure you have a nice straight cut end, no burrs on it or anything like that, and then you're going to take your coupling here, right here. Now the way these work is when you push your tubing into the opening here, it'll sort of lock in, and then there's double O-rings inside there that make the seal. If you need to get it apart, then what you do is you can see right here the little sort of ring right here. You pull it up, and that releases the pipe, and then you can pull it out if you need to. You should never have to at that point. And I never reuse these, to be honest with you. I always taught that if you do need to pull one out, just throw it away and get a new fitting, because every time you do that, you're possibly nicking the O-ring that's in here, and that O-ring is the only thing between this and a flood, right? So you want to make sure. So all you're going to do is take your pipe, your ring right here is going to be against the coupling itself, and you're just going to push it in gently, and it should go you should get about a good 1/4" that should go in there, and then it bottoms out. Once it bottoms out, if you yank on it, it's not going to come out. Okay, so that's sealed right there. So we're going to take this and attach it to our unit, the pipe that's coming off our unit. Then we'll run this over and cut it to length after we route it and attach it to our valve. So there you can see it. You have your tubing coming into your fitting right there. This is nice and secure. If you actually use a scissors to cut the polyethylene tubing instead of like a dike or a wire cutter or stuff like that, it'll be a smoother, nice clean edge on the bottom, and then you won't have any rough edges.
Just make sure the edges are not rough before you push it in, because that's what will nick the O-ring, and then that's what causes leaks. Otherwise you're good. Also, just make sure you have a nice gentle loop when you're going around. Don't get any big 90-degree curves. I also just did a little wire tie right here just to keep it in position, so we're all good. And if everything is sealed correctly, we shouldn't have any leaks, but nothing's ever guaranteed. Sometimes you just do have leaks because there's a fitting or something like that. But other than that, that's pretty much it. So all we're gonna do is gently turn on the valve here and then check for leaks. All right, so we got our water turned on. I saw the water flow through the clear polyethylene tubing over to the tank, and it's already good. Now, you're not ready to plug it in yet. First thing we're gonna do is flush the lines. And the way we're gonna do that is just go up to the faucet and we're gonna hold it for about 3 minutes according to the instructions. That's what they want you to hold it for. But they're trying to basically, when you open it up, it's going to fill the tank. So you have to fill up the tank first, get the air out, and then flush it. So that's why they're saying 3 minutes, which is actually a long time, believe it or not, to hold a handle. But we can do that and get it all flushed out. Our handle, we're just going to hold it on. I hear water running, but it's going to take a little bit because the tank has to fill. And we got to see water actually coming out of the spout here. When the water starts coming out of the spout, that's when we're going to know that it's actually, the tank has actually been filled up completely. It's a fairly good sized tank too, so that when you do want instant hot water, it's not just a little cup of water. You can get pretty much out of it, like before the tank drains down and the water turns cold. So you saw the size of the unit underneath there, so that's why it's, you know, fairly good tank. But we just have to wait until it fills up here. Now remember, it's not plugged in yet. We're not heating anything. We're just flushing the system at this point and getting water to come out of here. Hopefully. There it is. All right, so it's coming out here. They want you to hold this for 3 minutes. The final step here, which is actually just to plug it in. So I actually had an outlet underneath here already. There was a single outlet here. I just put a double outlet here. And we're going to plug this in here. Just route this up a little bit right here, but basically I'm going to wire tie this so it's all nice and neat underneath here. Stays out of the way so you don't get caught on cords and stuff when you're putting stuff under the sink. But this is where it's going to be, right here. I'm just going to plug that in. And then the only adjustment that you have on the entire system basically is the temperature, right? So it does have this dial right here, and you can pick the maximum temperature you want and the minimum, right? So if you don't want it scalding hot, but you want it super hot, then you can, you know, set it to what you want. I think the last time I had it set to was 3 from the max, if I remember. But I'm gonna set it to 2 from the max right now, and then we'll check the temperature once it warms up. Now, because it's now completely empty and starting from scratch here, it's probably going to take maybe 15 minutes or so to actually warm up, but you'll hear noises actually kind of like boiling water almost as it's warming up and things like that. So yeah, we're gonna let this warm up for the first time here and then we'll check it out. There's our completed installation. I don't know if you can hear that. It's very soft, but it sounds a little bit like boiling water. So this is getting warmed up here. So let's go up to the top of the sink right here. If I hold this down, right? Ow, it's already hot. Yes, it is already hot. I think it can get up to 210 degrees if you have it at the max setting. So what I would do is set it to the max setting to get it up to speed as fast as you can. And then once it's at the max setting, you can dial it back to the temperature that you would like it to be. So for instance, if you're going to do coffee, hot tea, chocolate, stuff like that, then you can basically, you know, find your perfect temperature. And then when you do your drink or whatever it is, you never have to wait for it to cool off. It's always going to be at the exact temperature you want it at. And that's the beauty part of this. Once you play with the temperature itself and you find the one that you like. So usually you start at the highest
just keep working your way down. That's going to take a little bit to cool, obviously. So what you do is you can test it out at the setting that you think is good. If it's too hot, you can move it down a little bit and then just turn on the water until it comes out cold. Then it'll start, you know, over again heating up the tank, and then it'll be at whatever temperature you set it at. Then you can test it again. So it takes a little trial and error back and forth to do it, but once you get it set, you'll be set and you don't have to change it again. And that's what I did in my old house up north, and it was always the perfect temperature every morning when I wanted to use it for oatmeal or tea or something like that. So just that's kind of how you'll work it when you want to set the temperature. But it has a wide range, and it is absolutely boiling hot. You gotta be careful depending what you set it to. If you hold your hand underneath there, you're gonna burn it. So you just want to make sure that you have it the way you want it, and make sure anybody using it knows that this is actually boiling water that's coming out of here. And that's pretty much it.
Guys, well, that's going to be it for an installation of the InSinkErator Hot 250 instant hot water dispenser. Love these things. They're great for, like I said, instant hot water for any food that you're making. They're also great, like for instance, wiping down the countertops. You want a nice hot water right away. I happen to have a tankless water heater in my house right here. It takes about 30 seconds to actually, you know, get hot water at the tap. This is actually instant. I can wet a rag with super hot water and wipe down the whole countertop. And I save water at the same time because I'm not riddling the tap running and waiting for the water to heat up and stuff like that. So there's a lot of uses for these things just besides food. So just keep that in mind. Just be very careful with it because the water is super hot coming out of these things, and you can easily burn yourself if you're not careful paying attention. But other than that, they're fantastic. I had one up north and it lasted 13 years, I think it was. So they're just little hot water tanks that have electric heating elements in them, so they're pretty simple. And that's pretty much about it. So just keep in mind when you first install it and it's warming up and everything, the first couple of times, you may all of a sudden hear this thing spitting water out there. That's normal. It's just the air getting out of the system. But once that's gone, then it'll be just like this. It'll just stay silent until you actually use it, and that'll be it. So, all right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, put your comments down below about this video, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace, guys.